Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming in from right here on my YouTube channel. Who am I? Well, I am your host. My name is John Campea. It is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, my international friends, gather around the virtual water coolers. We talk about our favorite things in the world, movies, movie news, a little bit of television, all sorts of good stuff. And we, of course, are joined today by the one and the only, the great, the one, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how are you doing today, sir?
John, it's a glorious day. It's hump day. It's surprise day. If you love the Mickey Mouse Club, I love Wednesdays. I always have, always will, and it's good to be here with you on another Wednesday.
And it's good to be with everybody here on this Wednesday. And listen, we do have a bunch of things to talk about here today. We're going to talk about Mulan. Mulan apparently is going to be the first Disney animation adaptation that gets a PG-13. So we're going to talk about the implications of that. We're going to talk a little bit about the Ben Affleck situation, which I think is both intriguing but also very, very inspiring. We're going to talk about that. Has Sony just dropped more definitive proof that they are, at least in some way, crossing over their Spider-Verse with the MCU? Cineplex, the major movie theater chain in Canada, continues to show that they are the absolute most evil entity in the world of movies. We're going to talk about that and a few things more. But before we get into any of that stuff, we got a couple things to talk about off the top. And the first thing we're going to talk about off the top is this. Now, I sometimes get flack from some people when a new rumor gets out there. Yeah, it's true, Rob. It's true. You'd think that nobody ever criticizes me, but it's true. It happens from time to time. But I have taken some flack from some people before because a lot of times, rumors go around. I won't talk about it. If a lot of people are asking about it, we'll address it and say. Now, what I'll often do is I tell people, look, when there's a rumor out there and y'all want to talk about it, make sure you don't just read it on the site you're reading it on. Follow the source. Where does it come from? And then I will often say, look, when you follow all these websites talking about it, but they all say they got it from the same place, and it's not exactly the most reliable place, and you got to keep that in mind. So yesterday, there was a story came out that everybody emailed me about and everybody wanted to talk about this report that came out that Planet of the Apes, the new one that Disney was going to do, was actually going to be a reboot. And it was covered on a lot of sites. And the first thing I said yesterday on yesterday's show, it's like, look, everybody, I always tell you follow the source. So I followed the source, and it turns out every one of these news outlets that are running this story are all getting it from the same place. It's a little site that I've never heard of. That doesn't mean it's not a wonderful site. I'm just saying it's just not one that I've happened to have heard of, called Discussing Film. I said, and so you got to keep in mind, this information is not coming from the Hollywood Reporter or Deadline or Variety or CBS or whatever. This is coming from a site that I've never personally heard of, and that's where everybody's getting it from. So take that with a giant asterisk. And again, I caught some criticism yesterday for bringing that up. Well, here's why. Here's why I always think it's important when discussing this stuff, and it's still fun to discuss, but when discussing this stuff, why I feel it's important to mention that, where did the information come from? Because the director, Rob, of the new, of the film, has come out and said this. It's never been easier for film journalists to actually get in touch with the actual people who actually know, but maybe it's the point to not fact check these days. Regardless, don't worry, I won't ruin the surprises, but it's safe to say Caesar's legacy will continue. And this is, of course, coming from Wes Ball. Now, first thing, side note, Wes, I appreciate your words and saying it's never been easiest to get in touch with the actual people. It's easy to say that, but it's 95% of the time when journalists do reach out, we never hear back. That's fine. That's fine. You've got more important things to do, like making the films we love. I get it. That's perfectly fine. But just point of order here, Wes, it's not that easy to just reach out, oh yeah, hey, what you doing, and expect an answer. That doesn't actually really work. But I appreciate that because you're doing more important things, so no problems for me. But Rob, it's this exact kind of situation, which is why I always feel like when we're talking about rumors and stuff, we need to pause and say, let's follow the sources. Where does it come from? And point out that this is coming from maybe not necessarily the most reliable place, not necessarily an unreliable, but not necessarily the most reliable. And there's that. Now, I said yesterday, Rob, that I would personally be perfectly fine if they did come out and reboot it. I thought, it kind of makes sense. Caesar was the centerpiece of the last trilogy of films. And, we know how War of the Planet of the Apes ended. So it would almost feel, I was perfectly good with the idea of them moving forward. But it sounds like they want to actually move ahead and continue with what the story was. Rob, what do you think about this and then continuing on with the existing story we've gotten already? How do you feel?
Well, it gives me... Look, I talked about this yesterday. I love the Planet of the Apes franchise. I grew up with the Planet of the Apes franchise. And I like the fact that this new, I call it the Caesar trilogy, sort of, it fit in a loose continuity with the original Apes films. And it showed us an era we'd never seen before. And they even referenced the original Planet of the Apes in Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Yes,
the first Caesar movie. And I really like that. And you pointed out something yesterday about the final war between humanity and the apes, like the Forbidden Zone getting nuked. The part where Charlton Heston says, "You really finally did it. You blew it up. God damn you all to hell." We have to see that war, and leading up. I mean, we know what's happened on the West Coast, or at least in California, with the Caesar trilogy. I mean, there's a big bad world out there that we really don't know what's been going on. So I like this idea that I'm glad that they'll continue on the Apes saga and continue on Caesar's legacy, whatever that means, because there's thousands of years between the original Planet of the Apes and the Caesar trilogy. So there's a lot of story to cover, and I'm glad that we're going to see that. And it'll be interesting to see who rises up to lead the apes in the wake of the power vacuum left by Caesar. So if that's indeed what they're going to do, and it sounds like they have an idea, like the director clearly has a plan,
yes,
or at least seems to know, and that's really exciting. So for me, I'm like, bring it on, man. And Andy Serkis can play another ape. I mean, it's not like you can't change his voice and do motion capture and they make it look like it's a different ape. I mean, whether it's Terry Notary or whether it's Terry Notary, who did the motion capture for the dog in Call of the Wild even, but Terry Notary, who's done so much great motion capture work and movement work. He even helped Brandon Routh to be Superman. To come back with Andy Serkis, recreating another ape. I love it, man. As long as we're getting more Apes movies and they're going to continue that story that sort of adds to the whole thing, I'm in. I can't wait.
I was very clear. I actually thought it would make sense. It makes sense to move on and kind of reboot it and cover different stuff, in a post-Caesar world. But at the same time, I'm perfectly good if they want to go ahead and continue on this story without Caesar. I will admit I will miss Caesar a lot because Caesar was, he was the centerpiece of these films for me. He was the main reason I really enjoyed watching these films, but that doesn't mean there aren't other ways to make these films really enjoyable and other characters to focus on. And like you said, Rob, really focusing on a new chapter of the story. So this could work as well. So the question here is, guys, what do you think about this? About West Ball coming out, clarifying we're going to continue on the legacy of Caesar. You feeling good about it? You're not feeling good about it? What are your thoughts? Jump down to the comment section below and let me know what you think. All right. With that down, let's move on to another off the top. And this is just a quick one here. But Rob, I don't know if you knew this, but Chris Hemsworth does not only play Thor. He's actually an actor. He does other things. Did you know that? I know.
I didn't know that at all.
I had to double check my sources. When I heard that because I thought that just can't be true, but it's true. And as a matter of fact, he's got a new movie coming out here pretty soon, but it's on Netflix. It's a new Netflix film that he's doing, and it's called Extraction. And Netflix has just put out their first images of Chris Hemsworth in Extraction, looking his regular badass Chris Hemsworth self. And here's basically it. So Netflix put out on social media, what you need to know about Extraction. It stars Chris Hemsworth. Oh, you need more? Okay. Hemsworth plays Tyler Rake. Oh my God, if that's not the most stereotypical sounding 80s action film kind of name for your character or whatever. Tyler Rake, a black market mercenary. It features the directing debut of Atomic Blonde stunt coordinator Sam Hargrave, who, by the way, also worked on Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. So keep that in mind as well. It arrives on Netflix on April 24th. This year. So in it, we get to see some action there. And by the way, the action in Atomic Blonde was absolutely top notch. It's absolutely incredible. Rob, I got to admit something. When I first read about this story, I realized that I'm not excited for this. And I'm like, why am I not excited? Like, if this was a theatrically released film, I'd be excited. And you would think that with films like The Irishman, and you'd think with excellent films like Marriage Story, you would think that my mind would be over this instant relegation, if you will, of Netflix films of just being lower tier. Now, granted, a lot of the Netflix original films are still, quite frankly, a lot of dreck. There's a lot of garbage out there. But they have clearly, like with Irishman, Marriage Story, and a few others, they've been showing a tendency to be on the upswing of the quality of their films. So when I'm looking at this, I think, okay, if this was coming out theatrically, I know I would be excited. Rob, why do you think there are some people out there, including me, that still have this hurdle to get over in our heads about it being a Netflix film? Because I see it's on Netflix, and quite honestly, I'm not all that interested in it at this point. Why do you think that is for some people like me still?
Well, because I think that their track record has yet to be demonstrated to be a reliable place where you can go. I mean, look, we talked about Six Underground. Michael Bay, great cast. Six Underground, it's Six Underground pretty much after the first 15 minutes. It's not great. And that Ben Affleck movie that they had come out that I was really looking forward to, the action film, and I think it's this particular genre as well. I mean, it's an action. It seems like all of these movies should be great. Here's my problem with these movies. They're great B movies that are masquerading as A-list, and they really should embrace the fact that they're not A-list. I mean, if you're doing an action film for Netflix, everybody's trying to do these prestige movies, and they let us down as prestige films, but then they also don't live up to their B movie. And when I say B movie, I don't mean bad, but like like to me, a perfect B movie is Commando with Schwarzenegger. A movie that's
great example.
a little outlandish. Like he's throwing table saw blades or at people and getting them in the face and stuff like that. You want a heightened reality to it, and Michael Bay did that, but he's also going for this sheen of respectability. And I think with these action movies, you read the plot of this, how he's got to go in. Chris Hemsworth has to go into this like cartel-infested town, and I'm like, bring that shit on, son. What I want to see is like another Olympus Has Fallen. With that kind of Olympus Has Fallen knew what it was, and to me, it delivered on that promise. And I'm waiting for one of these Netflix prestigious action films with A-list talent, and if you're not an A-list director, you're being backed up by A-list directors like this film is, and I want it to be great, but it's like they're too afraid to embrace. They want this air of respectability, and it's like, but for these movies, you don't need to do that. You need to go over the top a little bit. You got to make them delicious with a creamy filled center that it's just you bite into it and it just fills your mouth with wonder, and we're not getting that.
To your point, though, I mean, the fact that they're making his directorial debut, and hey, a smaller action film on something like Netflix is a great first film for a first-time director. But we've got a director making a directorial debut who was the action coordinator on a movie like Atomic Blonde. Like, does that give you a little bit, like you're talking about, really embrace that over-the-topness? Does that maybe suggest we could be getting a little bit of that over-the-topness you're looking for?
No, absolutely. And when I say over-the-top, I still want my verisimilitude, but it's got to have those moments where if you were in a theater, the audience would be like, yes, and they would all say that out loud. There's got to be that element of I don't know. It's hard to describe, but it's something that it needs a little bit more canon films, like what Cannon would do in the 80s with American Ninja or Delta Force, and those movies weren't great. What I'm saying is these movies are better than that, but there's still got to be an element of like dudes with swords taking out a bunch of other dudes in the face. It's got to be like that. And I want to see more of it, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense. So the question here is, guys, How are you feeling about this? First of all, I think the images coming out for Extraction look pretty badass. They look good. I like who they're bringing in as a first-time director. That's kind of neat. Are you guys facing the same kind of mental hurdle I am, that I'm still having a hard time like really taking a Netflix original seriously? Maybe unless it's a pure drama. I don't know. Maybe it was the Six Underground thing that kind of spoiled me a little bit. How are you guys feeling about it? Are you excited about it? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. With that down and out of the way, let's now move on to our main topics today. And how do we select our main topics here in the John Campea Show? Well, it's really rather simple. You see, you guys come up with them by going anytime 24/7 over to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. Once you guys get there, you're going to see a form. Fill it out with your topic or question. It's totally free. Hit submit, and then maybe, just maybe, you might see your topic or question featured here as a main topic on the John Campea Show. With that down, let's move on to that first main topic today. And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Brett WB, who writes, I'm not sure if this fits into the topics of the day, but maybe you can tweet about it to help it gain some traction or mention it off the top. I know you're not a fan of petitions. I'm definitely not. But I know how much you hate Cineplex and champion small businesses trying to do their own thing. All right. Brett also then gave me a link to a story, and I think this is a very important one to bring up. Now, you guys have heard me speak in the past that for the longest time, my favorite theater chain in the world was Cineplex in Canada. They just did everything right. Going to a Cineplex theater, particularly one of their Silver Cities or one of their premium theater experiences, was always a joy. And I always looked forward. It was really the theater chain that developed in me the excitement about going to the movie theaters, right? But in recent years, in my opinion, they have gone completely to crap. And I've talked on this show a number of times why I now feel like they are like the worst theater chain out there, from their scheduling, their treatment of customers, how their philosophy when it pertains to their customers, and also things like this. They are very much an evil company in my estimation. And the worst part about it is that as a company, they basically have a monopoly in Canada. For every movie theater screen in Canada, if you add them up, 75% of them, over 75%, that means more than 3 out of every 4 movie screens in Canada are a Cineplex theater. That gives them all the power. It is amazing, and it's disheartening. That gives them all the power, and it means they can treat you as a customer as crappy as they want and act in any way they want without any fear of reprisals, because what else are you going to do? They own a monopoly. They've got it. Well, there is a movement right now that was just brought to my attention because of this message of smaller independent theaters that are starting petitions, but also taking it for the Canadian version of the Better Business Bureau, which is basically a bunch of independent theaters being spearheaded by the Rio Theater in Vancouver, which Ryan Reynolds talks about a lot. Ryan Reynolds once tweeted that he wants to be buried at the Rio Theater in Vancouver, an independent thing. And they have kind of started a movement right now to try to get more attention to the monopoly and how Cineplex is trying to drive small theaters out of business. Now, listen, I'm the type of guy that I believe if you are so good at what you do that everybody just wants to go to your product, that means other businesses that compete against you may sometimes go out of business, but only when it's done fair and square. Cineplex, as I just mentioned, has this giant monopoly, Rob, and they have been leveraging that monopoly to do all sorts of evil. The kind of evil the Lex Luthor would smile and give him a pat on the back and an attaboy to them. Because basically, according to these stories, what's happening is these small theaters have brought our attention to the fact that a lot of these things are them using unfair business practices. Now, this is one of the social media messages that was put out. I'll see if I can get this a little larger so you guys can see it a little bit better here. But basically, the Rio Theater wrote this. If you're wondering why you don't see Oscar-winning films like Parasite and Jojo Rabbit at the Rio Theater, even after they've been playing at Cineplex for months, the answer is because Cineplex has a monopoly on the market that has gone unchecked for years and is crushing indie theaters across Canada. We have written a petition to demand that Cineplex stop their bullying tactics by dictating the market and blocking independent theaters from booking films with distributors. Let me read that part again. stop their bullying tactics by dictating the market and blocking independent theaters from booking films with distributors. We also ask that the Canadian Competition Bureau, that's their version of the Better Business Bureau, step in to enforce the Competition Act, that's a law in Canada, that prevents this kind of monopoly from continuing. Please show your support for indie theaters and sign this thing. Now, there is another independent theater operator, went on a little bit more in depth, and he basically said this. So this is from Eric, who works with an independent theater. He's a programmer, and he wrote, there are so many frustrating examples of Cineplex's hold on the market, keeping a title on a screen for one show at a weirdo hour just so an indie theater can't access that film, or better yet, claim the hold, then not play it altogether, which happened to me in December. Now, let me clarify again. I am all for business. And if you do your business way better than somebody else, and it just so happens that you attract all the market and they all want to use your service over the other guys, that's fine. That's business. But for a company like Cineplex to develop a monopoly and then to leverage that monopoly with distributors saying, we will only put your movies on our screens if you agree not to let the other theaters show it on theirs. That goes well beyond the standard practice of fairness and business and the whole philosophy of how the marketplace should work. It's fine that one company is bigger than all the rest. It's not fine when that company gets bigger and then uses that size to screw out customers and to screw out their competitors in an unfair manner. Because ultimately, this is also screwing you and me over. Now, I don't live in Canada right now, but if you are a theater goer out there, this screws you over too. Because what Cineplex is doing is limiting your choice of where you might want to go see Jojo Rabbit, of eliminating your choice of where you can go and watch Ford v Ferrari. Cineplex is basically choking away your choice, that, hey, if you're not happy with the Cineplex experience, tough luck. If you want to watch Jojo Rabbit, you have to come to a Cineplex Odeon theater. And that kind of bullshit should not stand. And it is just further, like, I have been desperately looking, Rob. I have been desperately looking for excuses and ways to fall back in love with this fucking company that I spent so many years, so many hours of my life in their theaters, but they continue to prove over and over and over again, not only are they incompetent, but it's worse than being competent, they're just pure evil. They're just pure evil in the relative sense of talking about the movie industry. Just pure evil. And they seem to have no qualms about trying to unfairly dupe their competitors, what competitors there are. And they have no qualms at all. If that means we got to screw over the customers while we're doing it, we'll screw over the customers while we're doing it. And again, once again, this really highlights, so emphasizing again for a third time, because I believe it's important, because I know somebody's going to try to twist my words. I am all for open market. I am all for, if you do the business better than the other guy, you should win out and the other guy should look for something else to do. I'm totally fine with that. But when you start doing these underhanded, dirty, evil, vile, fucking despicable tactics like this, that ultimately hurts the consumer, something's got to be done. Something's got to be done. And Rob, I'm not sitting here doing a bleeding heart, oh, just save the indie theaters just for the sake of saving the indie theaters. Hey, listen, if it's an even playing field and the indie theaters can't stand on their own 2 feet, then they're going to disappear. And I've got no problem with that. But if they're getting screwed over and it's not a fair playing field, if the independent theaters don't even have the opportunity to offer the better experience to the customers because the other guy is blackmailing the distributors to not let their theater show the big movies that people want to see, that's not right. And it's got to change. Anyway, Rob, you're reading about this situation here. What are your thoughts on it? And can you think of other situations maybe where we've seen something like that in the States as well?
First of all, your rant was getting me all tingly, and I salute you, sir. But no, look, as you know, movie theaters should be doing one thing and one thing alone, and that is giving us the best movie-going experience that we as consumers should get, with great projection, great sound, great refreshments, great soft drinks, whatever that is. And that's what they should be worrying about. What I cannot abide is when you hear about these kinds of despicable tactics. A lot of these movie theater chains are not going to be showing some of the films that we get at our independent theaters. Like, we have a great landmark theater here in Pasadena that shows films that are not going to be playing down the street at the ArcLight. I like going to both theaters. Now, if the ArcLight started to strong arm that landmark theater to not show a lot of world cinema and a lot of indie cinema, who loses out? Moviegoers. Now, I can't abide that. I think that's... I don't know of anything like that going on here in the States, although, when Disney doesn't allow the Fox catalog to be shown at theaters who are doing revivals and things like that, that concerns me. I mean, I don't like that. When we went to CinemaCon, I was able to meet a lot of independent theater owners across the United States, and I heard stories that I'd never even considered. There's a lot of mom and pop theaters in areas where you just don't have multiplexes. There are some places in the country, more rural areas, that indie cinemas in towns are sometimes the only places that are serving those communities. And if they couldn't have access to movies, that would be a damn shame. But like everything else, at the end of the day, all these companies want to make money by not doing their jobs correctly. They want to stop other people. They want to stop competition, healthy competition, from happening. Supposedly, that's why these things are put in place so consumers can win. Not so. I feel like these corporate interests, the more they're allowed to run rampant over everything else, the more our society is hurt. I'm all for profit, but I'm not for profit when unfair competition. There's laws to prevent this, and somebody should step in and stop this from happening, because it's not fair to anyone, and it doesn't make our society better. And it's certainly not great for business when one company gets a monopoly, and then once they have that, then they don't have to have their projector bulbs as bright. They don't have to, spend the money to actually make the presentation of movies the most important thing. That's what they should be focusing on, not worrying about what their competition is doing. If they would just provide a great experience, they wouldn't have to worry about somebody else.
I agree. So listen, guys, the question is for you. What do you feel about all this? Do you think maybe there's an angle to this that we're missing or we're not taking in consideration? I would honestly love to hear it. But anyway, your thoughts on this overall, jump on down to the comments section below and let me know your thoughts. All right. With that down, let's move on to the second main topic today. And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Mega Brent 85, who writes, "Hey, John and crew. I don't know if you've heard, but the Disney live-action remake of Mulan has received its rating, and it's PG-13. I was kind of shocked to see it get this rating, since the live-action remakes for Disney animated movies before this have been, at most, PG. So this is a big departure. What are your thoughts on this?" All right, thanks a lot for sharing that, man. And yeah, so apparently that's the word right now, is that Mulan, the movie that's coming out, the live action remake, which by the way, I think looks hella good. I think it looks really good, has apparently been given a PG-13 rating, which would, according to all the outlets, I haven't researched it myself, but all the major outlets are even saying this will make it the first animated adaptation to live action that Disney has done that gets something beyond a PG. Is this a big departure for Disney? Well, it is clearly a departure in one sense, because, I mean, like we said, it's the first time it's happening, so it's a departure. But it is a shocking departure. Does this move kind of signal to us a philosophical shift at the Mouse House over at Disney and the way they're thinking about and approaching these movies? And I would kind of suggest, Rob, that the answer to that is no. Because here's the thing. While there are other movies that they've done that have kept it PG-13, when you look at even the premise of this movie, this is a movie about war. This is a movie about there's going to be a lot of people that die in this movie. I mean, even just in this one thing, I mean, the main image is of Mulan wielding a sword. I mean, right? Then Mulan with her sword. We look at promotional pieces. She's bows and arrows and people trying to kill each other, and these wicked witches that are casting these spells, and an evil warlord coming to slaughter the inhabitants of a land, and blah, 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 blah. I don't think, the reason, Rob, I don't think this notes to us a philosophical shift at Disney is because I don't know that they really had a choice. If you want to make Mulan and you want to kind of stick to that story, I don't see how you do it in such a way that you can avoid making it at minimum a PG-13. Unless you're saying this warlord and his sorceress are coming to tickle fight everybody in the land, which I don't think that's the direction they want to go. Although I'm all down for a good tickle fight. Hashtag tickle fight. But again, I just don't see this as a philosophical shift because I just don't see how you do this movie any other way. So I'm actually not surprised. I would have been shocked, actually, Robert. I would have been shocked if we heard it was PG, because I would have gone, how the hell do you do that with a movie like this and the type of content that it has? So I think it's fine. I don't think it's surprising, and I don't think it denotes a philosophical shift at Disney. But Rob, you see it. How do you feel about it?
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, a rating, when you have war and conflict, people die. That's an inevitability of that. And I don't think if you're trying to make a film, obviously this is a live action movie where arrows are flying, people are going to fall down dead. And how do you get around that? It's not, you can't just break into another musical number. I think this is absolutely, maybe you
Arrow
can.
to the
our
face.
Troops are dying. The arrows are flying. The troops are dying. Hey, I don't know, but I think that it's right for this material. I don't think it's a philosophical difference. I think with all of the other Disney live action features, they weren't dealing with issues like this directly. And Mulan, by definition, has to. And there's no real way around it. And I think, look, I give it up for them for making a film that looks, at least from the trailers, to be beautifully made, lavishly produced. And I'm actually very excited for this movie, to be honest. And it looks like they've spared no expense. And it looks like something that's right up my alley. So, again, I think they're making the right movie for the subject matter. And I think if they had done something to soft pedal it, that would have been the thing that we should have been like, that's worrisome. But it doesn't look like they have. It looked like they're staying true to their subject matter, and I find that actually just the opposite. I think it's very heartening to see Disney going this direction and not shying away from this kind of a rating.
Question here is, guys, what do you think about this rating? Were you surprised to hear about it? Are you like me, where you would have been surprised if it didn't get a PG-13? What are your thoughts on this? Jump down to the comment section and leave your thoughts there. All right. With that down, let's move on to our third main topic today. And our third main topic today gets submitted to us by Alex Siff, who writes, a new article came out about an interview with Ben Affleck in which he admits it was his negative experience on Justice League, reshoots, rewrites, etc., that ultimately dissuaded him from continuing on as Batman and writing/directing his solo movie. Contrast to his older statements, which was about script of the Batman. What are your thoughts on this? All right, thanks a lot for sending in that in, Alex. And just to be clear, Alex, you're kind of misrepresenting a little bit the article, because your question makes it sound like Ben Affleck just said, this is the reason and the only reason I hated working on that DCEU stuff. It was much, much more than that. Now, the article that Alex is referencing is actually a fabulous article written over in the New York Times. One of the reporters sat down for like 3 hours with Ben Affleck, and they had a really serious heart-to-heart. And it was a very vulnerable interview. It was very personal. It was very open. It was shockingly frank. And Ben Affleck, really opens up about a lot of his crap. And also talking about the catharsis at doing a movie like The Way Back, which, by the way, I think looks fantastic. I can't wait to watch The Way Back. About how doing a movie like that, about a struggling, recovering alcoholic who suffered tragedy and is trying to come back from that, which is obviously very cathartic for somebody in Ben's situation. Now, look, take my comments with a grain of salt. You guys all know I'm a Ben Affleck fan, and I have been for a long time. I continue to be. But this is the not the only thing written in the article, but kind of the most poignant thing that goes to what we're talking about here today. which is, of course, this is the author after coming out of his 3-hour conversation with Ben Affleck. He's saying talking about Affleck, he stepped aside, allowing Matt Reeves to take over and Robert Pattinson to don the cowl after deciding that the troubled shoot for Justice League had sapped his interest. Affleck never seemed to enjoy his time as Batman. His sullen demeanor while promoting Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice in 2016 resulted in the hit meme, Sad Affleck. It's true. It did. I showed somebody, Ben Affleck says, the Batman script, Affleck recalled. They said, I think the script is good. I also think you'll drink yourself to death if you go through what you just went through again. I think the script is good. I also think you'll drink yourself to death if you go through what you just went through again. He doesn't name Matt Damon. I suspect it was probably Matt Damon that told him that. Now, this is just a snippet. This is just a snippet of this article. That there's a lot more context that goes into about Affleck's troubles, both ones that have happened to him and he was very open about his self-inflicted troubles, all that kind of stuff. He references about the marriage falling apart, or marriage struggles leading to more drinking, the more drinking leading to more marriage struggles, taking ownership of how he sabotaged his relationship, say, with Jennifer Garner, and all that kind of stuff. It was a very touching, moving, humanizing. I think that's a great word for it, Rob. It was a very humanizing article to me. I think one of the things that we as movie fans often forget, Rob, and I count myself, and I'm guilty of this as well. I think we are often guilty of remembering that these icons, these movie stars, that they are human too. And you have to try to put yourself for a moment in Ben Affleck's shoes. Now, let's take a step back for a second. Affleck admits a lot of this stuff was his own doing and his own self-inflicted damage. But many people will crumble at one harsh word spoken to them by somebody else. And it's a human thing, Rob. It's a human thing. We don't like being debased, and we don't like being insulted, and we don't like being put down. And a lot of people, it's a very human thing to kind of half crumble with one unkind word. One unkind word can really ruin a person's day. Now imagine you're a Ben Affleck, and you get to do the dream of a lifetime. You get to be Batman. And the news finally comes out that you're Batman. And what did he face? He faced millions and millions and millions of people talking about how he sucks, he's garbage, they're going to ruin Batman, he's terrible, blah, 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 blah. And now you've got to try to carry that and go into a production being positive and try to bring all your energy to a production. And I thought he was brilliant as Batman, especially in Batman versus Superman. And then, unlike you and me, for the most part, we get to have our relationships. And if there's any trouble in our relationships, they're private. Maybe a few family members know, maybe a few friends know, but for the most part, they're private and we get to deal with it. Ben Affleck has a problem. It's public news. It's public knowledge, and it's public news that gets talked about and debated and dissected about a dude's personal life by millions. And listen, I get it. If you want to be a big celebrity and you want to get all the benefits of the fame and fortune, that's going to come with some drawbacks. I'm not saying it doesn't. That's part of the deal. But I just think we, as film fans, and I include myself in this, need to also keep in mind that they're going to have reactions and it's going to hurt or whatever them like it would, everybody else. I'm not surprised, Rob, to hear Affleck say that the experience of doing the DCEU stuff that he did is a big part of why he stepped away and a big part of why he wanted to get out of that situation. I'm not surprised at all. He also mentioned his own drinking and his own self-destructive behavior was a big reason as well. Now, look, Rob, I said years ago, when Ben Affleck was still insisting he was playing the role, when he said, I'm not going to direct just because I don't really feel like I can focus on the directing while also being the Batman all the same time. I said when that came out, that's BS. It was BS. I say that as a guy who loves Ben Affleck, and I think he's just playing a good PR card and all that kind of stuff. All this stuff is coming out now. Rob, I guess there's two different questions when you look at an article like this, at a situation like this. Number one, let's stick to the movie side. What do you feel about the revelation about the reasons ultimately why Ben got away from being Batman? But number two, on a more human side, how did you feel? Because I know you read the article yourself. How did you feel about the article as a whole?
Well, first of all, I mean, to start with your second question, I thought the article was very illuminating, and I thought it was very raw and honest, and I greatly admired Affleck for doing it. He's somebody that I've always admired. Like, the first time I remember seeing Ben Affleck that he registered on my radar was in Richard Linklater's Dazed and Confused back in '93.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, he went on and they did Good Will Hunting, and they win an Oscar. Matt and Ben win an Oscar, and there was controversy as to whether or not they actually wrote their script, even after they'd won the Oscar. And then, of course, he had to weather the Geely storm when he was going out with J-Lo. And worked. I mean, he goes and he works with Martin Brest, who directed Midnight Run, who directed Beverly Hills Cop, a great director. And that film was kind of a misfire. But then it wasn't even about the work anymore. It's just about his personal life. And Ben Affleck is a Batman fan. He then gets cast as Batman, gets pilloried and raked over the coals on the internet by everybody. Then he goes and he makes Batman v Superman, probably trained like a mofo to get in shape, busts his ass. The guy wins the Oscar. His film wins Best Picture. But still, that's not enough because, didn't get a directing nomination. And then he goes and he does Batman, and he wins over the fans in his portrayal. But then the movie is destroyed. So all the hard work that he put in on this film, and by the way, people put just as much hard work into good movies as bad movies in the fan community, that the fans that rejected him at first, well, they rejected his movie, but then they accepted him. So it's like, at some point, when you're working on your career and all you're trying to do, I've never seen Ben Affleck do anything where I would say it was just a paycheck. I know he's got this new Netflix movie that's probably not the greatest, that people are saying is not so great, but some relationship drama. I haven't seen it. But the guy has put in the time, and the guy has worked his ass off on many different kinds of films, and I have never seen him deliver, say, the kind of performances we've been seeing from, Bruce Willis of late. In a lot of these movies, he's never seemed to me to be someone who's taken a paycheck, and his personal life has been front and center. His life with you get a pass for her. They were married, and now he has to deal with that. Is in the and all of the things that go on, and all he's really tried to do is a lot of great work. And I love the fact that he's in a movie now playing an alcoholic. That by every stretch, he comes back and works with his accountant director again. The accountant was kind of a breakout hit.
I love that movie. I love that movie. Dude.
I bought the 4K disc. I love that movie. I want them to make a sequel. And I think that, what I loved about this interview with him is Ben Affleck just finally threw up his hands and said, I got no more fucks to give. I mean, I'll tell you what do you want to know? Because it's rather than wait for all of this press, he comes out in front of it. He's raw, he's honest, and he's got nothing. What more is he supposed to say? What he wants to do is he wants to get people paying more attention. I mean, the guy's made 4 great movies. I even loved Live by Night.
I like that film. I didn't think it was his best, but I really did like the film.
Oh, it was beautifully made. Every frame of that film, you could see the care and effort that was put into it. It might not have been everyone's favorite movie, but like you said, it's respectable. I could appreciate the work, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm glad to see Ben Affleck come out in front of this thing. That article is his way of sort of slamming the door, going, you say what you guys want. Let's get back to concentrating on the work that we're doing here, the important stuff. And I really, for that, I salute him. And I salute the work that he does.
Yeah, I think he does do great work, and I love the fact that, look, and I'm not trying to make excuses, a lot of what he has gone through has been self-inflicted, but he recognizes that, and he's trying to get it on. And I'm not saying, I never want to say that we as fans don't have the right, because, again, if these celebrities are going to take all the benefit of us being fans and our adulation and the riches and the fame and all that comes with it, there's going to be a downside to it as well. I just think we as fans should also just keep in mind that when repercussions happen, that these are actually real people. with real feelings. And I remain a big Ben Affleck fan, man. And I remain just so hoping that his career gets back to where I know he has the potential to be.
Well, I want to point one more thing out that I think should not be forgotten. Through all of his travails, he has continued to turn out great work. He's never he never fell back into the shadows and stopped working. That dude has been out there putting his, giving us his all, whether he was directing, whether he was acting in other people's material. And, that can't be easy either. You've directed 4 very, very good films, one of which won Best Picture at the Oscars. He is a world-class filmmaker, and yet has he shied away from going and acting in other people's projects? No. Has he ever done press, at least to my knowledge, where he's slagged off on people, other directors or other collaborators? No. Through all of this, he has continued to do great work, and that is some pretty admirable. That he's got an incredible work ethic, and I salute that guy, because a lot of lesser people would have not done what he's done.
Well, listen, and to your point, I want to point this out. When all the stuff was going on, when we knew that Ben Affleck was leaving as Batman, but they were still denying it, I kept on saying, okay, all this stuff they're saying isn't true, but it's the right thing for him to say, because they're still trying to promote their films. He's trying to be professional, blah, blah. To me, that just makes that more admirable, because when you start now reading that, he was very disheartened. It killed his enthusiasm. He was very frustrated with all the production stuff that's went on over at the DCEU. And keep in mind, even in the midst of all that and all of his unhappiness and all of his dissatisfaction with how things were happening at the DCU and what was going on and all the production drama that was going on, even in the midst of all that, he's so professional that he still went to Comic-Con, jumped up and down, and said, Matt Reeves has directed Batman. I'll walk on all fours like an ape for Matt Reeves. And he did that all the way through. There was sad Batman. But in the midst of all the stuff, that even though he was completely unhappy with what was going on over there, he did his best to put on the brave face, went out there and was a pro and kept trying to promote it, never said a bad thing about anybody. And I'll tell you what, hearing about that just makes me respect the guy even more.
Absolutely.
It really does.
100%, man.
So anyway, guys, question is, have you guys had a chance to read this article? If you have not, I really highly recommend it. It's probably the easiest thing in the world to find right now. Just go on to Google, search Ben Affleck, New York Times, and you'll probably come across the article. It's a really, really enlightening piece, and I thought it was a very, very well done piece. I want to know what you guys think about all this. Jump on down to the comments section below and leave us your thoughts. All right. With that down, let's move on to our 4th and final main topic today, and I'm excited about this one. All right, This 4th and final main topic today comes to us from Ed Copeland, who writes, "Greetings, John. Have you seen this thing going around about Flash Thompson's Instagram page?" This is great. If so, if I understand it right, Sony set up a fake Flash Thompson Instagram account. Now, Flash Thompson is, of course, the character in Spider-Man. All right. They set up a fake Flash Thompson Instagram account to help promote Spider-Man Far From Home. They did. And on that account, Flash just posted something that seems to tie into Morbius. Is this yet more proof that the Sonyverse and MCU are fully crossed over now? All right, thanks for sending that in, Ed. Okay, so just to clarify what he's talking about here. So the fictional character Flash Thompson, of course, Peter's kind of high school nemesis in the 2 Spider-Man movies that we've got going on. Hey, Flash Mob. I actually really have grown to love this character in the movies. So leading into Far From Home, they created a fake Instagram account. Sony created a fake Flash Thompson Instagram account to promote that film. Now, of course, that character and that film are in the MCU. Now, take that and put that aside for a second. Morbius recently put out their trailer that got everybody talking, not just because of a Spider-Man mural on the wall, which could or may not be just a little wink and a little Easter egg, but then they had Michael Keaton in the trailer as well, dressed in the same prison outfit he was dressed in at the end of Spider-Man Homecoming. They seem to be strongly suggesting that maybe Marvel won't do it, but Sony, we're willing to kind of cross over the universes here. With that in mind, Sony got on Flash's fake Instagram account again and posted something that actually crosses over with several of Sony's properties. Here's what it is. So this is Flash. You see Flash up there in the top corner. That's Flash Thompson. And the name of the fake Instagram account is Spidey1fan, because of course he loves Spider-Man. And it's a page from the Daily Bugle. And at the very top, it reads, a vampire in New York? 5th vampire sighting reported in New York. And then, of course, the main headline there of the Daily Bugle is, where is Spider-Man? Maybe suggesting that after the revelations at the end of Far From Home, maybe Spider-Man goes missing a little bit. And then Flash Thompson writes in the big black box in the bottom, you know, I sometimes miss when the world wasn't being destroyed by vampires, aliens, and flying robots. Now, you could, on the surface, look at that and think, well, maybe that's not a reference to Morbius. Maybe it's a reference to Blade, because of course we know that Mahershala Ali is going to be playing Blade in the MCU, and maybe that's what it's a reference to. There's a big problem with that, though. We're not getting a Blade movie for years. Morbius is coming out right now. So I don't really buy into the potential argument that maybe the vampire references are about Blade. I don't think they are. I think they are. But to further that point, Rob, there's actually something in this headline that I missed the first time I looked at it. And I just noticed it this morning. Okay, look at that black box again where Flash writes, you know, I sometimes miss when the world wasn't being destroyed by vampires. Look at the headline behind the box that is kind of half covered up. It says, Killer Cassidy on the run, which is, of course, a reference to the Venom movies going on. So when you understand that there's a direct reference to a Venom movie in there, you then look at the vampire references right at the top of Vampire New York, and of course in him writing, I remember the world when it wasn't being destroyed by vampires. And we've got the Spider-Man reference. Rob, I don't know if we're about to see Kevin Feige's Marvel MCU films reference the Sonyverse at all, but I think this is pretty clear that Sony in their movies, they're going to reference the MCU. They're doing it very clearly, very plainly, and I didn't think they would, but I think that the evidence, anecdotal as it may be, I think the evidence is mounting up more and more here that Sony is indeed going to be doing their referencing crossovers if at minimum, and I think this just goes to prove that. Rob, what did you think about this little post that Sony put out, and what do you think the long-term, if any, ramifications there are?
Well, it's interesting because if you look at Venom, Venom was pretty far removed. I mean, it was far removed from New York City and sort of all the goings on with the MCU. You're on the West Coast, so things are sort of removed, and there's no reason why they can't, change. And Cletus Cassidy, again, we've got a country away from the MCU, and I think that there's no reason why we don't know. I don't know where Morbius takes place, but if Morbius takes place in New York, I mean, I think we're going to see a lot more potential crossover material because nothing in the Sonyverse so far has done anything to really contradict what we've seen in the MCU. Right. There's not going to be a lot of there. So I think maybe that was perhaps by design. The MCU, they knew Sony was like, okay, well, once they agreed to allow Spider-Man to be in the MCU, well, that floodgate had to open and they had to go, well, okay, well, if we're agreeing that Spider-Man can be in the MCU and at some point we're going to take Spider-Man back, then wouldn't it behoove us to make sure that the rest of our universe could sort of slide in continuity-wise and not contradict the MCU? So even if Spider-Man is no longer in MCU movies, whenever an MCU movie came out, you could still obliquely figure out a way to reference it. I mean, I have no problem with that. It just, to me, it's exciting. If you could think that all of these movies somehow work together in tandem, and once you have Tom Holland come as Spider-Man back to the Sonyverse, that's it. They're connected. They're never not going to be connected. So I think it's been a shrewd. They've been playing. Kudos to Sony. They've been playing this one very, very well.
Let me ask you this. I made a reference to this, but I want to know what you think. I think what we might be seeing evolving here is like an MCU and Netflix MCU situation where the Netflix MCU would sometimes vaguely reference the larger MCU, but the actual MCU never referenced the Netflix shows. Do you think we could be in a situation here where we're going to get these Sony movies that will explicitly reference the MCU, but we may never actually see an MCU film like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness won't like reference Venom and won't reference. Do you think it could be a one-way street, or do you think maybe we might see Kevin Feige actually reference the Sonyverse films?
You know what? I think Kevin Feige is a man that likes to play his audience like a fiddle. And if he thinks that there's an opportunity, if there's a moment where he could work in a Venom reference, he knows people are going to go bananas. He does, because there's no downside to that. Venom outgrossed a lot of the initial forays into cinema that the MCU characters made. It outgrossed Doctor Strange.
Yes, it did.
So to be a to throw in Venom into an MCU movie, all people are just going to get gibbly over that, John. Nobody's gonna have a problem. And wouldn't it be great if like I could see Morbius talking to Doctor Strange at some point? Just because why not? This is something the MCU has been charting ground, and this is something that we've never seen before. Two different studios having a continuity between their movie franchises. I mean, I like the idea. I think it's cool.
All right. Well, the question here is, guys, what did you think about this little posting from Flash Thompson? And do you think this kind of solidifies that, yep, Sony is now at this point directly referencing the events of their Spider-Man in the MCU? Jump on down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys, with all of that down and out of the way, we are now going to move on to our live questions. Of course, there's a couple different ways you can send in live questions. You can use the best way, which is the tip link at the top of the description of this video. Just go ahead and use that. And by the way, you can use that link 24/7 if you want to get your questions in early for the next day's show. You can do that. Or you can use the super chat feature here on YouTube. But before we get to the live questions, as we do every day, Rob and I are going to take a quick 4-minute break. Rest the vocal cords, stretch the legs, refill our drinks, give you a chance to run and use the bathroom, talk amongst yourselves. So if you guys will indulge us and hang tight, don't go anywhere, Rob and I will be right back. We'll see you in just a couple minutes. guys, and we are back. Thank you so much for your patience and indulgence as we took a little bit of a break there, refilled the drinks, but now we're ready to go with your live questions. So let's jump on over and start with that now. And we're going to get things started in the live chat with Daniel Rahim, who writes, another thing. Birds of Prey made more money in its domestic opening weekend than Dr. Sleep did in its entire domestic run. Wrap your head around that. Hugh McGregor, who was in both films, just can't catch a break, and now his Obi-Wan series is on hold. Well, I mean, Obi-Wan series is delayed, and again, I've got some speculation what might be going on with that. But listen, I'll tell you what, Daniel, I thought, what am I looking for here? Dr. Sleep was criminally underattended. That movie deserved more people to see it. It was really, really good. I think it was badly titled. I think it was badly marketed. I don't think they let people really know what the movie was, really. I think a lot of people were confused about it, but it was such a good film and really did deserve better. All right, Luke, I Am Your Plumber writes, I'm curious if you had your choice of one sitcom to remake from the 80s, what would it be? For me, it would be The Greatest American Hero. You know, I thought Greatest American Hero for a while, but now today I think it would just be joining an over-cliched, over-full marketplace with a ton of superhero content already there. I don't know. You know what, Rob? I'd be curious to see an incarnation, especially with the era we live in now, of Three's Company. I think Three's Company as kind of a sex comedy in like our modern environment about what that would be like. I think a Three's Company modern take would actually be really fascinating. What do you think about that one, or what other one would you like to see?
Three's Company is really good. I mean, considering the era that we live in now, and I think that's a good idea. You know, a sitcom that I always loved that I think, I mean, I don't know if it's talked about enough, Barney Miller. Barney Miller.
Yeah.
You know, Barney, there's so many police procedurals and all that. I mean, I know now we've got things like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and I get all that, but there was something about Barney Miller and the actors that were in that show, and it was such a smart show. And you know, I always remember as a kid, I'm like, oh, Barney Miller is on, and it was one of those shows that then I would start watching it, and I'm like, even as a kid, I'm like, this is really good. So I think Barney Miller would be, I don't know how you would do it, but I think that was always something that to me elevated the sitcom genre. But I think that Three's Company, man. Now I'd never heard you say this before, but I'm thinking about the possibilities there. That could be really good.
Yeah,
really
and
good.
You know what?
Especially with, well, like, you know, you could have the renters' rights. There's all kinds of issues. You could immigration. You know, whether I can just see it could be really, really funny.
You know, my parents, the reason I knew Barney Miller is because my parents would watch reruns of Barney Miller. And I remember it was amazing to me the first time I saw The Godfather, I'm like, wait, that's Fish from Barney Miller. I remember like this going, oh, so, and it had a great musical score. Yeah, Barney Miller, I'd be totally down for that one. Okay, next up, Daniel H. writes, looks like Fox had been developing Call the Wild leading up to the merger. It's been released under 20th Century Studios, I think. Disney Plus just released Togo with Willem Dafoe, which is more than eerily similar to Call the Wild. Looks like a Galaxy of War. Like, and what that's a kind of a reference to is like when we were talking about Call the Wild earlier, I don't know why I had it in my head that it was a Disney Plus release or a streaming release, but it's not. It's a theatrical release. I still don't understand how that movie got made. I still don't understand why that movie got made. And I certainly don't understand how some genius film executive greenlit a $110 million budget for that movie that I don't know is going to crack 20 million opening weekend. So, yeah, it's a lot of question marks still surrounding that, Daniel, but good point. Luke, I Am Your Plumber writes, I heard you mention Talking Tina not too long ago from the Twilight Zone episode, one of the most nightmare-inducing episodes of television of all time. I freaked out and immediately called my brother. He used to scare me when I was a kid saying she is under my bed and is waiting to kill me. Now my brother is a fan of yours, all because of Talking Tina. And Rob, I still, to this day, as a frickin' adult, when that episode, whenever I see even clips of it, I'm Talking Tina and I'm going to kill you. It's like, nope, click. Just, I can't.
You
It's
better
still
be
one of the
nice
most.
to me.
Oh my God! It's still one of the most terrifying things of this television show from the 50s. That it still haunts my absolute nightmares. That one still creeps me out. I cannot watch it without getting like totally freaked out. Do you have an episode of Twilight Zone that does that for you?
God, the first episode of Twilight Zone I ever saw was To Serve Man. And that's the episode where the aliens have arrived and you think they're very altruistic and they're helping mankind. And they start at the end of the episode, they leave a book behind that says To Serve Man. And after it's deciphered, Lloyd Bachner, the lead actor, his office discovers that it's a cookbook. And even as a kid, I was like 5 or 6 when I watched it. And I watched it because there was a flying saucer in it, and then the Canamits. And it's still, I mean, now I look back on it fondly and smile. I even have an action figure of a Canamit here. But that episode, the idea of it, that these aliens come to Earth and bamboozle us into thinking that they're good, and really they just want to eat us. And I'm in my life, I'm like, if aliens ever do show up, that's going to be the first thing I'm thinking about them. That they really just want to put us on their dinner tables, like we want to put every other animal on this planet, and we don't think anything of it. And to this day, it might not be as bone chilling and creepy as Talking Tina, but it does fill me with existential dread.
All right. Next up here, 50 Shades of Geek writes, I think the reason why The Lion King didn't win Best VFX was because the Academy didn't see anything in that they didn't already see in The Jungle Book, which did win Best Visual Effects. But I don't accept that as an argument, because there's nothing that they saw in 1917 that we hadn't seen in other things too. It's just a matter of, was it done with excellence? That's the thing, and to what degree. There really wasn't any movie other than Lion King this year at visual effects that didn't do some replication of something that we've already seen before. Lion King was unlike anything we had seen before, so I really don't think that's one of the reasons. 50 Shades also writes, I completely agree with Jonathan's opinion from yesterday. The Greatest Showman is awesome. The Greatest Showman was so freaking good. I just love that movie more and more every time I watch it. It's really grown on me. Because the first time I saw it, I'm like, I don't know if it's all that great of a movie, but man, the music was so good and everything. But the more I watched it, the more I actually kind of fell in love with it. So yeah, there's that. Willow writes, which movie out of the recent Planet of the Apes trilogy is your favorite? Mine is the second one, Dawn, even though I think the title for the movie should have totally been switched with the first one. That's an argument that's been made a lot, Rob, that really Dawn and Rise should have probably been swapped for titles. But I'm personally in complete agreement with Willow. I thought the second one was the best of the three. I thought the original film was the second best, and I liked the third one. I liked War for the Planet of the Apes, but to me it was a step below the other ones. But for me, it's number 2. What about you?
To be honest, I liked Rise of the Planet of the Apes best. I really did, and I thought that both Dawn and War were really good. I think I probably liked Dawn a little better than War. Because like you said, War was sort of misleading. It was, these apes have been trapped, they've been cornered, and they just wanted freedom. It wasn't a battle necessarily. It wasn't war to me. It was more of, we're breaking out of prison. But there was a lot of emotion and pathos in that movie. But I thought as a movie, I really liked Rise the best because it was so surprising. I didn't know if I was going to like it. You're coming off of Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes, and it was like, I thought Rise was so good. And the emotion, like when you first meet the orangutan, that new sign language, I thought that movie was just wildly entertaining and much, much better than I thought it was going to be. Whereas Dawn and War weren't quite as good as I hoped they would be. But I really loved Rise.
All right. Next up, the Scumbag of New York writes, I'm not really into Star Wars or young adult fiction, but I finally finished Lost Stars. Nice. Yesterday, after you recommended it, it was amazing. Equally tragic and heartwarming, and really makes me want to watch the trilogy. Thank you. Again, guys, if you have not read, her name's Claudia Gray, who wrote Lost Stars. It is, in its DNA, it's a YA novel. Fully admittedly, and I'm not into that stuff, but the way they do Lost Stars, it's a Star Wars novel that tells the story of Star Wars, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi from the perspective of this young guy and this young girl who are growing up in that, and one kind of goes the way of joining the Empire, one goes the way of joining the Rebellion, and it just tells the story of A New Hope, Empire, and Return of the Jedi from a really different perspective, and I loved it. It was brilliantly done, and everybody that I know that has read it has quite enjoyed it, so I'm glad you enjoyed it as well, Scumbag in New York. Take his advice and check that book out. It's wonderful. Sam Fisher writes, "Hey, Captain, any talk of getting La Costa Nostra to join the Burning Droogs?" I think, Rob, what he is referring to is, I believe, if I remember correctly, I think that was Harloff's. I think Harloff gave me that nickname, La Costa Nostra. I can't remember why he gave me that nickname, but I think that's a nickname he gave me once. So you've been I saw that you made a trade the other day.
Yes, I got Bonnie. And everyone thinks I'm crazy for it, but you know what? I think she and I are birds of a feather, peas in a pod. I don't know, John. You want to make a triumphant return to the Schmodown? I know a manager.
It's like getting a man to fight, boys. It's just no fun, no challenge, nothing to it. Little busy, by the way, Rob. Don't know if you've noticed.
I know you're making a movie now and all that, but come on.
But it's good to see you shaking things up and making moves. I like Bonnie, by the way. I think she's great. All right. Great. Next up, Dhruv Deshpade writes, "Now that Taika has an Oscar, which MCU director do you think has the best chance of winning the next one?" I would say Creighton, Love Just Mercy, and I don't know what ST12 is. I'm not...
Creighton?
Yeah, Creighton. I don't know. You know what? Maybe they meant to write Peyton, but they spelled it Crett award anytime soon. I don't think I see the Russos winning an Academy Award anytime soon. That's a good question. I don't know. There's just something.
Russo brothers could win it.
I don't know, man. I haven't been impressed with what they've been putting out so far outside of the MCU. They've not been killing it.
But they haven't directed.
No, but they've been. Their production company. They've been. I don't know.
True.
I'm still always torn about the Russo brothers because I love the Russo brothers. They've always been incredibly generous with their time with me. I think they're two of the most fun, open, wonderful directors in the business to sit down and talk with, and I always cheer for them. But if I'm going to be just fair and honest, I'm really not a big fan of anything they did certainly not. You mean Dupree. I'm not a big fan of anything they directed event or MCU. And I'm waiting to see what they do post. I just think there's something magic that happens when Kevin Feige takes on some directors. Because you look down the list, like I can't think of another one that could be in line to win it, other than Taika, to win a directing Academy Award. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how that all evolves over the next couple of years, Rob. It's going to be interesting to see. All right. ZMG Ruler writes, whenever the next Justice League is, it'll definitely outgross the 2017 Justice League. It would be hard not to. It would be hard not to. So let's hope that it does. Inception is the bomb, writes. One of two. It seems a Joker sequel is a foregone conclusion, but is it? The Joker not having Batman was possible because it was an origin and didn't require Batman. But now that the Joker is established, how much longer can he go without encountering Batman? As long as they want. Two of two. Wouldn't Warner Brothers have to cast a new Batman and Joker sequel since they've already stated Joaquin Phoenix iteration isn't tied to the existing properties? And wouldn't they risk confusing audiences with Matt Reeves' Batman coming? So here's the thing, Inception. You made a statement of fact that I do not believe is indeed a fact. That if you move on with Joker, you have to bring in Batman. No, you don't. They don't have to do anything. They didn't have to make Joker fall into a vat of chemicals. They didn't have to have, his therapist being a Harleen Quinzel. They didn't have to do anything. That's the great thing about not making your movie part of a shared cinematic universe. You don't have to do anything. You can be as creative and do whatever you want. So, listen, you guys know I don't want them to do a Joker sequel. I think it would undermine some of the greatness of the original. I love the Joker just the way it is. Leave it alone. But I do agree with you. It is pretty much a foregone conclusion that they probably will do one. But don't fool yourself into thinking it means they must do this. It means they have to follow the comic book rules. No, it doesn't. They don't have to do that at all. As a matter of fact, when they do eventually do a Joker sequel, I'm telling you, I don't think there's going to be a Batman. I don't think there will be. Not to mention, you got to keep in mind, Batman in the Joker, Bruce was what, 6 years old? 6 or 7? I'm not even sure how old he was. No, I don't think they're. Rob, do you think if they do another Joker that they necessarily will put in a Batman character?
No. And I'm with you. I'm like, I don't want to see a Batman character in the Joaquin Phoenix Joker realm because it would just cheapen that character, I think. I mean, we're what are you going to do? Have Batman show up and Joker's going to have some cockamamie fight against Batman? I want to see more of of an anarchist, that agent of chaos that we saw when Heath Ledger's Joker showed up. I had this idea that he'd been doing all kinds of chaos, and it was just now that he arrived in Gotham City to bring his unique brand of it. Finally, I think he was causing chaos for years before he showed up in Gotham. And I think what we're seeing is, if we are indeed seeing the origin of the Joker, maybe he leaves. Maybe he leaves to cause chaos in LA or cause chaos in Metropolis or do something. But he's become a sort of a lightning rod for controversy or social change by stirring up populations to rise up against the oppressive capitalist state. And why not show more of that? What do you need Batman for? It just turns it into yet another Batman story where he's going to fight the Joker? Who cares? Use the Joker to show us something we've never seen before.
All right, next up here, we've got Django19 who writes, how about the Leafs last night? LOL, go Pigs. I didn't even follow to see what happened to the Leafs last night. Yesterday was another shooting day. We were on set shooting for my movie last night, so I didn't even see what happened to the Leafs. But I do love my Penguins. The Penguins are my second favorite team. They have been ever since the era of the great Mario Lemieux. Anyway, Samuel Shin writes, good to see Ben doing better. He can move on knowing some of us feel he was the best Batman, absolutely. Although if I can snap my fingers like Thanos and Cavill would still be our Batman, he and Cavill would still be our Batman and Superman. Samuel, I'm 100% with you. I unapologetically, Ben Affleck's incarnation of Batman, at least in Batman versus Superman, not so much in Justice League, because they kind of changed his incarnation in Justice League a bit, but Ben Affleck's iteration of Batman is my favorite I've seen on screen. Now, I'm not saying Batman versus Superman was as good as The Dark Knight. I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm just saying this manifestation of Batman, to me, is the most true manifestation of Batman I've seen on the big screen. And he's my favorite. Ben is my favorite in that. And Henry Cavill is my favorite Superman. That said, if only, Samuel, we could just do the snap. But I don't think, I hope we do, but I don't think we're ever going to see Henry Cavill as Superman again, and I don't think we're ever going to see Ben Affleck as Batman again. But yeah, I'm with you, man. If I could snap my fingers like that, they'd be back. Jonah writes, I want to see Newman from Seinfeld as Dr. Doom. I just planted that image in your head. Oh, you did. Hello, Reed. I mean, that would be kind of hilarious, Jonah. Okay, somebody out there has got to get a hold. I can't remember the actor's name from Jurassic Park who played Newman. But somebody out there's got to get a hold of him, and please do a YouTube video of him being Dr. Doom. It'll blow up the internet. Please do that. Sam O'Neill writes, ordered a Chris Evans signed Captain America poster and Chris Pratt signed Jurassic World poster, and they just arrived. So stoked. Dude, listen, I am not, Rob, unlike you. I'm actually not an avid collector of stuff. I actually don't physically collect a lot of stuff. I mean, yeah, I have a lot of pops, and I do collect some, like in small doses, I collect some things. But actual autographed stuff is actually really cool. And I'm not the world's biggest Hunger Game fan, but I have a signed autograph poster of the Hunger Games with all the cast, because they each came into, I was doing press with them one day, and they were each one at a time would come into my hotel room, including the director, and they all autographed it. And it's just, even though I'm not the biggest fan of the world of Hunger Games, I actually really like it. Do you have anything, Rob, amongst all the amazing stuff that you have, that's like an autographed piece that is particularly meaningful to you?
Well, now that you ask, I can reach over and get it, because I just got it recently. I'm a Space 1999 fan, and there's a company that makes...
oh, God, I love that ship.
Yeah, this is the Eagle transporter from Space 1999, Well, this company, 1612, did a special edition, and this is Brian Johnson, the creator of the Eagle Transporter. This is his autograph. He also was the visual effects supervisor on Empire Strikes Back. So while this is, I have most of the autographs that I collect, that are signed, are authors of books, but and I don't know how many people would care about Brian Johnson's autograph, but when I was growing up, he was a hero of mine. I knew who he was because of Starlog magazine, and also because of The Empire Strikes Back. So to actually have one of the coolest spaceships, this is a die-cast version, one of the coolest spaceships in all of science fiction, television or movies, autographed by the man who created it.
That's pretty dope.
I'm pretty stoked with this.
That's awesome. I love that ship.
I know,
okay.
right?
Let's move on here. Gord Brody, longtime fan, writes, "Hey, John, I saw you thought Call of the Wild was a Disney Plus thing." Yeah, I was just talking about that, actually. Movie, and realized the movie you and I both might have been thinking about is called Togo. No, I knew the distinction between Togo and Call of the Wild. One's got Willem Dafoe, one's got Harrison Ford. One has real dogs, one has a CG animated dog. And much better looking movie with a real dog. Would love to hear your thoughts on a comparison between them. I don't really have any plans on watching Call of the Wild. I really don't have any plans. And I have not seen Togo yet, but I got to say, though, I've heard very good things about it. I've heard very, very good things about it, and that is something I probably should sit down and watch. I haven't watched it yet, but I've heard good things about it, and maybe I should sit down and watch it. So that might not be a bad idea, Gordy, except for the fact that, again, that I have no plans of watching The Call of the Wild, because they use a CG dog, which I just think is dumb. All right, best D14. Tom Holland said at the Onward premiere that he starts shooting Uncharted in 4 weeks. Did Travis Knight sign back on? Also, hi, guys. Really? Did he? I haven't heard that. I would have to look that up. That would seem to be in direct contradiction to everything we've been told already. Because did they? I can't even remember, Rob. Did they even announce who a new director was? I don't even think they've announced a new director yet, have they?
I don't think so either. No, I don't think so.
So maybe he meant months. Maybe he meant Spider-Man he starts shooting. I mean, I don't know. I'll have to go and look that up. Thanks for putting that on my radar, Christopher. I'll have to go look that up. All right. Let's see. Where do we go? Okay, Ryan Lohner writes, here's something to really test all film is subjective. I have no problem at all with Jobber Superman. It's not like a real person is being defamed. And if his truest low point in the Nintendo 64 game didn't destroy him forever, this has no chance. I don't remember that part. But what you're bringing up, Ryan, is outside of the discussion of film and being subjective and stuff like that, because when you're talking about film or a TV show being subjective, you're talking about whether or not you enjoyed it or not. My issue with what they did with Superman, and I don't like the show, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, and some other people do, and that's great. That's perfectly fine. My issues are not a quality of television show issue. My issue with what they did with Superman goes beyond that to a philosophical problem that I have. And I'm not going to revisit it and go into it all again, because you guys are probably sick to death of hearing me go on about what CW did with Superman. But yeah, that's the issue there. It's not a quality of the show or a quality of the movie issue to me. I don't like it, but it's totally cool if others do. Nothing wrong with that. But I have a philosophical issue with their philosophy towards the greatest superhero of all time. And that's always kind of where my issue kind of came in. Frankie G writes, possible the Planet of the Apes is a reboot of the original, not this last trilogy. First film of this trilogy had an Easter egg of a lost spacecraft that would fit right into the original series reboot. Again, Frankie, the director, Wes Ball, seemed to come out and has kind of refuted that report that this was going to be a reboot at all, and said they were continuing on with the Caesar legacy. So it seems like that issue has been put to rest. Once again, emphasizing why I always tell everybody, when you're reading these stories and they all seem to be the same story, follow the source. Where did they get it from? And was that a reliable source? Or not that the source may not be a good source, but is it a source with a strong reputation for always delivering accurate facts? And then you got to take it with a grain of salt. Jay Meister writes, if John Krasinski is cast as Mr. Fantastic, I will become a born-again Christian. Well, Rob, it does seem like a lot of people are very interested in John Krasinski being Mr. Fantastic. But here's an interesting question, Rob. It always seems to be tied to Emily Blunt also being Sue Storm. How do you think people would feel if Krasinski got cast as Mr. Fantastic, but without Emily Blunt also, or vice versa? Do you think it'll be met with nearly as much excitement?
You know what? I would be disappointed because I like the idea of a real couple being cast as Sue Storm and Mr. Fantastic.
There's a novelty to it, isn't there? There's a novelty to that.
There is, and I would hope that energy between the two of them, assuming their marriage is happy, and it seems to be whenever you see them, I would like to see that. I think that could be utilized by a great director, and it could really spill forward. And I mean, can you imagine, like, when you're shooting scenes? I know that if I was making that film, to allow them to do a little husband and wife improv, like in the midst of whatever scenes there are, and you could benefit from that energy. And it could only, I think, help, unless, of course, you know, their marriage was on the downslope and they hated each other, in which case it probably wouldn't work as well, but that doesn't seem to be the case.
All right, let's move on here. Next one comes us from Give Luigi a Ring, who writes, "Hey, John, one of two. In rewatching Iron Man, I realized a moment where Magneto could have been created. In a parallel way to the comics, when Tony first goes to starve the 10 rings of his weapons, there is a kid that is separated from his dad. We don't see how this scene plays out after Tony says, 'He's all yours.' Would be cool for his kid to then start wrecking shop and flinging metal at him. Thanks and bring on the filthy." Yeah, but that's not what happened. I mean, so it's an interesting idea, Luigi, to go in and kind of look for moments that the MCU could maybe leverage as a starting point or as a hint that they never planned on in the first place. But now you can go back and retroactively, Rob, use as a hint of maybe a foreshadowing of what could be coming later on in Mutant. But what you're describing, though, would mean to change the history of the MCU. So, and not to mention the age becomes a big issue at this point as well, and would really kind of start to kerfuffle with the whole idea of what Magneto is. So I don't know if that works, but I like the idea of digging back into old MCU and finding scenes or threads that can be repurposed and rearranged to now, after the fact, kind of retcon a bit and say this was actually a foreshadowing of the mutants to come. Rob, what do you think about the theory that we just heard?
Well, yeah, I mean, it could work. I mean, it might be true. I don't know. I really don't know what they're going to do, and I've thought a lot about this. You know, I don't know, because you and I, John, we've talked a lot about how would they change mutants, and I don't know how to do it effectively. And I'm curious as to what are they going to make it a result of Scarlet? You know, in the comics, during the House of M storyline, Scarlet Witch changed the MCU so mutants had taken over the world, and then when they switched it back, it wasn't the case. But could Scarlet Witch be the key? But then if she did that, you still couldn't have the backstory that you'd need. I don't know, man.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's such a complicated issue that they're facing right now.
Because like you were talking about, I remember like we talked about what would Magneto's backstory be. You know, in what made the first X-Men movie so great is that it starts in Auschwitz, and you're like, that changed comic book movies. But if you had Magneto now, you have an age problem. You know, if Magneto was interned at a camp as a child, he would be too elderly, if not dead. So what backstory do you give Magneto that's comparable that would illuminate his struggle? You know, would you make him, say, if it's Denzel Washington, and would there was Rwandan genocide or something? Or
I think the Rwandan genocide is a ripe historical event to base that around. But
you know, a lot of that was really just black on black violence, but was that humanity caused by colonial?
But it's also, I mean, you could look at Auschwitz was white on white violence, right?
That's true. You're right.
of a young child seeing the worst in humanity and being turned off humanity. And that's kind of why I like the Rwandan genocide thing, where you have a young child seeing humanity at its absolute worst, much like the Magneto that we got in the Auschwitz camp said. He saw humanity at its worst. And that's kind of why I think, but you're right, Rob. I mean, this is the tangle they have to get through. They have to untangle this whole thing to bring in the X-Men. It's going to be, and look, no matter what they do, people aren't going to be happy with it. Right. Let's just be acknowledged like that. No matter how they navigate this, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to complain and be unhappy about it, because there's no real one clear answer for this. There's not, and it's going to be challenging.
I'm really curious to see what they do, though.
Yeah,
me
too.
I really want to see because I'm sure they know what they're going to do. They've had a lot of time to think about it.
I'm still not sure. They 100% know what they're going to do. I think maybe Kevin Feige knows he's still got a lot of time to think about it, but who knows? We'll have to wait and see. All right, we need to keep moving here. Last one we'll get to today with Rob here, because we got to let him go. He's got things to do. Glenn Tracy writes, Final Fantasy VII was the game of my childhood. I used to love playing Final Fantasy VII. The story, the world, and most importantly, the characters. If the remake is as successful as the original, I pray a movie series is greenlit. It would be difficult to adapt, but would you look forward to it? Here's the thing, Glenn. And I'm going to get a lot of people they're going to get mad at me for saying this, Rob. A lot of people are going to get mad at me for saying this.
Uh-oh.
I don't know that could actually have wide-ranging success. Because things like Final Fantasy VII, those types of stories and the way they do that narrative doesn't click with a large body of the average movie-going audience. Like, I remember Final Fantasy Spirits Within, which was at the time, oh my God, the animation in that was so far ahead of its time. Do you remember that one, Rob?
Yeah.
Spirits Within?
And I really liked it. A lot of people were like, it's supposed to be photorealistic faces, but I can tell they're CG. That didn't bother me. I thought it was
it was the most advanced stuff. It was so advanced. It was so great.
I liked it. I was like, this is pretty neat.
Yeah, but a lot of people didn't.
I know.
And I think because it's that kind of anime style of narrative telling that I don't know, that definitely works with its core audience, but I don't know that it will click or work with a larger group of, average film goers. And I think that Spirits Within, while it's not the perfect example, but I think that kind of becomes a little bit of a microcosm that kind of shows what I think the differences would be. So I'm not convinced it would work as a movie, Rob. What do you think?
I'm not either. And I think that, again, the characters and the world is rich, but you'd have to, I think, really rework the concepts to make it work as a film. And I think ultimately, the Final Fantasy movies are not exactly, or the games have changed over the years. And it's not like you're adapting Dune, for instance, where you have this, okay, here's your fixed subject matter. And there's some people love those games, and they have such they're so beloved around the world and that's why I thought that the Final Fantasy Spirits Within movie was it was also kind of off-brand in a way. And I don't know, man. I think it'd be really hard. I don't know if you're right that the average audiences would embrace, like, which Final Fantasy story you're going to adapt. What elements are you going to take? Are you going to mix and match, and would that piss off the fan base? Or would you start over and do something from scratch that's redolent of what we've already seen?
Yeah, and I got people in the live chat that are already getting mad at me saying, John, that's not Spirits Within is not a good example. But it is. Because, Rob, even when you look at let's look at Studio Ghibli for a minute. I think Studio Ghibli is a great example of this. These are, not all of them, but many of them are masterful movies. But it highlights a style of storytelling that I don't know resonates with a lot of the average North American viewing audience. And I can already hear people saying, but no, John, that's because of language and that's because of subtitles. I'm not saying that's not a part of it, but even when you cut through all of that, the really fantastical nature of those particular types of stories really resonate with some of us, but I don't know that they do with the larger movie-going audience. I am not saying a Final Fantasy couldn't be a good movie. I'm just saying if you do it and are even remotely true to the spirit of Final Fantasy, I just don't know there's a lot of other people that would sustain it as a successful large film. I just don't know. I'm not saying that definitively. I'm just saying I have my doubts, but
right.
I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. Hey, listen, Rob, we know you got a bunch of editing you got to do today, so we got to let you go. But in the meantime, before we continue on the show, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at BurnettRM, find me on Instagram at Robert Meyer Burnett, or find me on my own YouTube show and YouTube channel, The Burnett Work, and my show, Robservations, the show about something.
Rob, always a pleasure having you here, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
All right.
Have a good one.
I'll see you Thursday. Or tomorrow.
Yeah, all right.
No, Friday.
Friday. We'll see you Friday. All right. Have a good one, man. All right, guys. Continue on now with the show. Thank you. And we still got about 15 minutes here. I think we can get through all the questions here today. So let's keep right on rolling. All right. Matthew Phillips writes, arguably the post-Brando generation of male actors consists of Hoffman, Morgan Freeman, Robert De Niro, Robert Duvall, Gene Hackman, Al Pacino. Who would you say are part of the post-De Niro generation? Leonardo DiCaprio, Tom Hardy, Michael Fassbender, Jake Gyllenhaal, Christian Bale are some of the names for me. Yeah, I mean, those are all good names. Those are all really, really good names. I'd have to think about it a little bit more. I mean, I'm a big Chiwetel Ejiofor fan. I'm a big fan of Chiwetel Ejiofor. He hasn't been given a lot of the high-profile roles yet, but I think he's truly one of the finest actors today. Denzel, but you could probably put Denzel in with the on the outside edge of the Pacino era. But yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio. I don't know if I'd put Tom Hardy up there. Tom Hardy's great. I really do like Tom Hardy a lot. I don't know if I put him in that whole De Niro kind of era just yet. Michael Fassbender, man, we need to see him get on a hot streak again. He's done some really, really terrible films lately, but he is a tremendous actor. But I like a lot of the names you put up there, Matthew. Those are pretty good ones. Matthew then writes, since he is my favorite Marvel character, I have to ask, if they do it, how do you see the MCU bringing the Punisher in Punisher Frank Castle? Oh, I have no idea how they would do it. None. No idea. There's a billion different ways you could do it, and any way would be good. I can tell you this, though. I firmly believe they are bringing him into the MCU. I 100% believe they are bringing him into the MCU. Now, I'm not saying I've got insider information. I have heard people connected to Disney kind of suggest that that's what's going to happen, but I just believe 1,000% from all the anecdotal stuff I've heard and everything that you are going to see Frank Castle in the MCU. It won't be John Bernthal, but you're going to get a Punisher, definitely. How they're going to do it, I mean, he's just an average guy with a gun in many ways, so there's a billion different ways you could do it, and all of them can be done well. But I think you're going to be happy, because I do believe within the next 3 years we're going to get an announcement about the Punisher. Anyway, Russell Amador writes, hey, John, just doing my morning roundabout of movie news, and I stumbled across a headline story by the Illuminati stating that rumor that it has it that Sony is working on a Mysterio solo movie. Scratch his head, takes us with a grain of salt, but sounds interesting. Again, there's no point in even talking about it. Anybody can write any story they want. And maybe there's truth to it, maybe there isn't. I'm going to wait till I actually see something like that on a Variety or a Hollywood Reporter or something like that. At that point, it becomes worth talking about. At this point, some site that I've never heard of, which doesn't mean it's not great. I'm just saying, some random site that I've never even heard of said something. It's not worth talking about at this point. Murray Reich writes, it says The Rise of Skywalker will be available on digital March 17th. Does that also include on Disney Plus same day? No idea. I did read something interesting, though. Now, everybody knows I didn't like Rise of Skywalker. That's fine. No big deal. But I love, one of the things I'm very fascinated about was that they've already said they've got a feature-length making-of documentary on it. And listen, I love these behind-the-scenes documentaries. Look, I don't like the prequels, but I love the making of documentaries attached to the prequels. I find them fascinating. And I'll tell you what, even as somebody who didn't like Rise of Skywalker, I may very well get it just to see that behind the scenes making of documentary. That kind of fascinates me. All right. Anthony Lucalano writes, I was replying to a tweet Regal made, which said, you have a magic wand that grants you a sequel to any 2 movies you choose. What's your pick? I responded saying, personally, I prefer a sequel to Baby Driver over Scott Pilgrim versus the World, but I love both of these films. Edgar Wright tweeted back saying, you may get your wish on the former, mind officially blown. Well, remember, the former in that case would, of course, be, if you mention Baby Driver first, that's the former. So, I mean, the word has been out there. They are developing it. They've greenlit the development of a Baby Driver sequel. By the way, how fantastic was Baby Driver? I love that movie, and I love just about everything that Edgar Wright does. This guy is such a wonderful filmmaker. I just so enjoy the cinema he makes. And but I totally believe we're going to get full official news on a Baby Driver sequel soon. So not surprised to hear it, but it's also exciting. And isn't it great that a guy like Edgar Wright would reply to stuff like that? That's just how cool Edgar Wright is. I'm glad you had that experience, Anthony. All right. Michael Mahik writes, being a geek means never having to play it cool about how much you like something. Simon Pegg. That's a great quote. I love that. Speaking of Edgar Wright and his cohorts, embrace all your geekdoms, everybody. We only live once. That's such a great point of reference. And by the way, I think I just heard that Simon Pegg just celebrated his 50th birthday. I think Simon Pegg just recently celebrated his 50th birthday. So a happy birthday to the wonderful Simon Pegg. We love your stuff, man. And happy birthday. And that is a great quote, Michael. Thank you for sharing that. Being a geek means never having to play it cool about how much you like something. I love that. Those truer words, man. Truer words. I love it. Thanks for sharing that. All right. An anonymous viewer writes, hey, John, I am happy today is my 27th birthday. Happy birthday to you, my friend. So I went to see Sonic and Birds of Prey this weekend with my girlfriend, and we love a lot of the Sonic movie. Super funny, and Birds of Prey was so bad. Thank you for your show. It's my favorite thing on YouTube. Well, thank you for sharing that. And listen, I'm not a huge fan of the Sonic movie, but I got to tell you what, it was significantly better than I thought it would be. Because you guys know, I thought that movie was going to be absolute hot garbage. I thought it looked terrible. I thought the trailers were bad, all that kind of stuff. But you know what? The writing of it, the amount of depth, like the depth with Sonic. Listen, I'm telling you, there's some emotional depth to this movie. Some really good laughs. There's a bunch of things that they didn't do well, and that's perfectly fine. I don't love this film. I don't think it's particularly all that good, but it is significantly better than I thought it would be. And you got to give it props. And yeah, I was disappointed with Birds of Prey. But hey, even with movies I don't like all that much, I always love going to the movies. I'm glad you had that chance, and happy birthday to you, sir. All right, F. Gouge writes, Gogue rhymes with rogue. There you go. F. Gogue writes, enjoyed October Faction series on Netflix. Stupid name, watchable series. I've never even heard about it. I mean, that's the thing. Our viewers, you guys, our community, you guys do a better job of promoting Netflix's stuff than Netflix does. Have you ever noticed that? I bet more people, Gogue, just heard about October Faction as a result of you writing that in than of any of Netflix's marketing, because I've never even heard of the damn thing. Netflix does not. I love Netflix, but they do not do a good job of promoting their content, man. So thanks for putting that on everybody's radar. Jarrett Shirley Garcia writes, do you think they will make Sonic 2? At this point, I would have to guess yes. We got to wait and see how it does long term. I mean, look, the fact of the matter is, as of right now, it still hasn't broken even. But the only thing opening up against it this weekend is the Call of the Wild. So I expect Sonic to make another $30 to $35 million this weekend. At this moment, nothing's locked in stone, but at this moment, I got to say, I kind of do believe they'll make a sequel. It seems to make sense. All right. Star Wars Rocks writes, John, Clone Wars Season 7 starts in 2 days, and I don't care. I'm super happy for everybody who likes Clone Wars, and you get to see it come back. And actually, I'm very, very happy because I know a number of people that are friends of mine really like that show, and they're super excited for it. So that's awesome. I'm not going to pretend that I am. I'm not excited about it. I'm probably not going to bother watching it, but I am super excited that other people are happy and that other people are excited to see it, because that's the important thing. So there you go. All right. Adam Turchetto writes, I remember a time here in Canada when Cineplex was almost out of business. Famous Players became bigger and AMC came in and changed the theater experience. Now Famous Players has been bought up by Cineplex and AMC is gone. Yeah, AMC was in Canada for a while. When I was a kid, there were two major theater brands in Canada, Cineplex and Famous Players. I grew up, for those of you who know Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, I grew up not far from Lime Ridge Mall. That was the mall that I used to go to all the time as a kid. I would go girl watching because that's what you're young and stupid that you do. And they had a little 4-screen theater in Lime Ridge Mall. It was the only theater up on the mountain because Hamilton's kind of divided into the mountain and downtown. Anyway, and it was a Famous Players theater. And then I remember when Cineplex, when they merged, and for a while they were called Cineplex Famous Player. It was a merger of the two names, like Cineplex Odeon Players. It was something stupid like that. But then ultimately just evolved into just Cineplex. And they kind of formed a monopoly, and it was fine for a while because they treated their customers well. They acted really well, and they made a great movie theater going experience. And sometime after I moved away from Canada, sometime in between when I got in my car, packed it up, and drove to Los Angeles, and now something went wrong, and they just became awful and insufferable. And again, I'm only speaking of my own personal opinion, but this company is vile. I hate their practices, and the fact that they're a monopoly, and we talked about it a little bit early in the show. Man, I'm not saying I want to see them go under, but they just got bought. Cineplex was just sold to Cineworld from the UK, which also just recently bought Regal Cinemas in America, and I'm really hoping they institute some changes and make Cineplex great again. So here's hoping, man. Here's hoping. All right. Adam Toretto also writes, could you put a link in the petition when you break up the stories later today? No, probably not, but it's really simple. All you have to do is go and search for it. Just hop on Google, do a quick search. I'm sure you won't have a problem finding that at all. All right. Cy Blakemore writes, I found out Tiffany Smith is in Kevin Smith's He-Man. Yeah, I saw something on her social media about that. I haven't talked to, the last time I talked to Tiffany was at the, I believe, the Rise of Skywalker premiere. I think that's the last time I talked to her. But yeah, I saw something on her social media that she was going to be doing that, which is great because she's done a lot of stuff with Kevin Smith in the past. So I think that's awesome. She got to be, she got to play royalty on a Lifetime movie, and now she's doing this. It's just great seeing her do good stuff. All right. Jeremy writes, yeah, The Accountant is badass. Great film. I freaking love The Accountant. I love that movie. I don't care what anybody else says or thinks. I don't know why more people didn't go see it. It is a wonderful film. Ben Affleck, John Bernthal. It is a fabulous movie. I wish more people would have seen it because it's doubtful they're going to get a sequel. They keep talking about maybe doing a sequel. Hopefully they will at some point. All right. Daquan Seeley writes, a really large super chat. Thank you so much for supporting the channel on that level, man. I'm hearing rumors that a Spider-Woman movie is happening. There have been whispers about that. I don't know if it's going to be a part of the Sony universe or the MCU. I can't really just Sony with their comic book movies anymore, and the MCU is pretty consistent with a lot going on. What do you think about this? I think Sony's doing great. I had a ton of fun with, I guess I can take my headphones off now. I had a ton of fun with Venom. I know there's a bunch of you guys that didn't like Venom. That's fine. I'm not trying to talk you into it. I freaking had a great time watching Venom. I thought Venom was a lot of fun, and it was hugely successful, made over $800 million. And then what did they do? They made the best comic book movie of the year with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Sorry, Infinity War was not the best comic book movie of the year. Black Panther was not the best comic book movie of the year. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was the best comic book movie of the year. And for me was the number 3 best movie overall of the year. I had Quiet Place ahead of it, and I had Black Klansman ahead of it. But after that, I had Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I think Sony is doing really good right now. I think they've got things on going in a really good direction. I kind of love what they're doing. I love the little marketing things they're doing. I'm excited to see Morbius. I thought the trailer for Morbius was really good. So listen, not everybody thinks the way I do, and that's totally fine. It's all subjective. We have our different movies that we love or don't love, and that's totally cool. But I got to say, for me right now, I think Sony's got things going in a really great direction. I really do. So fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed. Here's hoping. Just keep hope alive, my friend. Let's just keep hope alive. All right. Mark C. writes, also sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you so much for supporting the channel on that level, Mark. We appreciate it here. Tilda Swinton's Celtic Ancient One was a change demanded by the Chinese government, who has major issues with Tibetan monks and the Dalai Lama. When does the financial gain of a market get too scary as we've been to a communist country? I'm not getting, Mark, I really do appreciate the super chat. I'm not getting into the politics of it. I'm just not. There is, I know this, there is a lot of he said, she said, and some exaggeration that is going around out there, but ultimately underlying about the politics behind things, I'm just going to stay out of it. I've made that point before. I think it came up with, what was that animated movie that was out recently about they had the Abominable Snowman? Was it just called Abominable? It might have just been called Abominable. Anyway, a lot of people writing in, what do you think about the fact that China forced them to change a map in a scene? I mean, I'm like, look, I don't care. I'm not here to worry about the politics of it and stuff like that. Not my thing. All I care about at the end of the day when it comes to the movies is, are you making good movies? So when it comes to focusing on our discussion about movies, I just want to know, are you making good movies? And as far as the validity and the accuracy of some of the claims that have been made and what does it mean, all that kind of stuff, it's just not something that I am either, qualified to really give a lot of insight on, nor do I have a lot of desire for us to get into that and derail our conversation, keeping away from the movies themselves or the movie-going experience itself. So I appreciate your concern, Mark, and I appreciate that you find it to be an interesting, fascinating topic. It's just something that I don't think is a topic for this show. That's it. That's all. Just not a topic for this show. But man, I really do appreciate you supporting the channel, man. I appreciate that you're here, and I appreciate that you are interested in that stuff. And I'm sure you're going to find a lot of like-minded people that want to talk about it as well. All right. Anders F. writes, Ben Affleck is so underappreciated, it's ridiculous. I've been saying that for years, dude. I've been saying that for years. Like when they cast him as Batman, John Schnepp and I, half hour after the announcement was made, John Schnepp and I got online on YouTube Live and were like the only people out there saying, this is great, while the world was laughing. And I've been telling people for a long time, Ben Affleck is underappreciated and underrated on a lot of different ways, but that's just my opinion. All right. Filming in Ohio writes, good day, gentlemen. What are the chances we see a Thundercats movie this decade? Over, under 50%? I'm actually going to go under. Not 0, not 5%. Like if you'd set the line at 5%, I'd say more. But at 50%, I'd say under. But here's the thing. Whenever you talk about in terms of decades, in Hollywood, 5 years is an eternity. A decade is infinite time and space. I mean, seriously, 10 years is lifetime upon lifetime upon lifetime in the movie industry. So I will still say under 50, but not as low as you might think. I just think they've tried and took swings at it. And I think every year that passes, I think lessens the chances even more. So still possible. I just wouldn't hold my breath at this point. I'd like to see it though. You and me filming in Ohio, I'd like to see it. I just don't think it'll actually happen. Shane Sakaya writes, John, not sure if you previously addressed this, but on the subject of cinematic universe crossovers, did you notice that Vulture is in the Morbius trailer had the exact same outfit on as he did at the end of the Spider-Man Homecoming movie? Oh, yeah. We were talking about that a little bit earlier. That Michael Keaton, and now somebody else, I got to admit, I didn't notice it the first time I saw it. Right after the trailer came out, I noticed that somebody else mentioned it. And then I went back and checked, and you're right. Michael Keaton, and we mentioned this earlier in the show today, in the Morbius trailer is wearing the same clothes that he was wearing at the end of Spider-Man Homecoming, which is like, well, that says a lot. So, yep, absolutely. We did talk about this earlier, and I think that's fascinating. And now you combine that with the Spider-Man mural, you combine that with the Flash Thompson Instagram stuff that they're putting up, crossing over with not just Morbius, but also the Venom movie. All this anecdotal evidence is kind of stacking up a lot. And I think it's fascinating. I think it's absolutely fascinating. All right, Jeremy writes, Talking Tina and Barney, expectations subverted. Yeah, you want to subvert my expectations? Barney the Dinosaur movie coming up? Put in Talking Tina. That'll subvert my expectations. John Dotson. writes, Destin Daniel Creighton directed Short Term 12, Just Mercy, and I think is doing Shang. Oh, that's why. Thank you. This is why it is great that we have, it's not just one idiot in front of a camera. We have the whole community here. That's why. Well done, John. Well done bringing that up. Thank you for that. It's like, why are you bringing up Just Mercy? Yeah, Just Mercy's great, but the guy who directed Just Mercy, guy doing Shang-Chi. Okay. There you go. There you go. Thank you for bringing that up, sir. Is that the name of the guy who did it? Hold a second. Let me bring this up here. I just want to make sure I get this right. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Yep, there you go. There you go. Being directed by Destin Daniel Creighton. I knew I've seen him before. I just forgot that was his name. And he did, by the way, how great was Short Term 12? Short Term 12 was great. Just Mercy is fantastic. I think we're in for a treat. Now, I want to see how he does with an MCU movie first before I get too excited. But anyway, see, this is great. Thank you, community. This is great, John. Thank you for throwing that in there, man. All right, Spencer S. writes, and the last couple of questions, guys, then we'll be wrapped up here today. Spencer S. writes, another thing to look at in the Instagram post is the Daily Bugle logo. It's the logo from the Raimi Universe Daily Bugle and not the dailybugle.net, Far From Home. I personally think the multiverse is playing a role in Sony connecting with Marvel. See, an element of multiverse, but there are still a lot of people that think that, they're going to bring in the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. They're going to bring in the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. I do not believe that at all. I don't believe that at all. And I don't think it would be a good idea. Nothing's impossible, though. I mean, we have seen stranger things happen in these comic book movies. Nothing's impossible, but I don't think that's the direction they're going whatsoever. Ali Ali, I'm terrible with names, forgive me for that, writes, man, I really want an Avengers movie with Fantastic Four. Maybe getting it. I mean, it would be a ways off. It would be significantly a ways off, but we might be getting it. Hang tight. I wouldn't doubt it. And look, if they're going to bring the Fantastic Four into the MCU, they're going to use them in the MCU. You know what I'm saying? And that would include the Avengers movies. So yeah, so I think we're all good. I think you're all good. I think you are definitely going to get what it is you're hoping for and what it is you want. So just hang tight because the Fantastic Four are coming. Whether or not they're coming with John Krasinski or not, we don't know. That much we'll have to wait and see. But what we do know beyond a shadow of a doubt is that we are indeed going to be getting Fantastic Four. We're definitely going to be getting Fantastic Four. Okay, guys. That will do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for being here and being a part of it today, guys. Thanks to Robert Meyer Burnett for bringing his sunshine and gloriousness to the show. Thank you to all of you guys for making the show a part of your day and being here. It's always fun hanging out with the film fan community, talking about stuff. And special thank you to all of you guys who sent in the live questions for two reasons. Number one, you gave us great fun things to talk about. And number two, you supported the channel while you're doing it. And all of us here on the John Campea YouTube channel, thank you very much for that. Don't forget the John Campea Show returns again tomorrow. Make sure you come on back. Today's another shoot day for us with the movie. So there will not be, like there wasn't yesterday, there will not be a post-show chat today. Again, we're shooting on the movie a little bit later today, so won't have time to do that. But I think we're going to be able to do that tomorrow. So just pay attention and keep your eyes open for that. All right, guys, that will do it for me for now. Thanks so much for being here. My name is John Campea, and until next time, guys, bye-bye.